revenue generated from the tariffs, but business leaders say they're still looking for an end to the uncertainty.
There are a lot of questions about the tariff revenue.
Just going to go live now to Sydney, of course, with the Iranian ambassador expelled from Australia over links to anti-Semitic attacks in the country. This is Executive Council of Australian Jewry co-CEO Alex Ryvchin responding.
Our nation and our sovereignty, and as Australians, we are outraged by them. Foremost, these attacks that deliberately targeted the Jewish community, destroyed a sacred house of worship, caused millions of dollars of damage, and sent terror through our community. For many years, we have warned of the threat posed by the Iranian regime. This is a regime that not only subjugates its own people and pursues war in the Middle East using its proxies, it has the capability and the willingness to project terror throughout the world. The entity directly responsible for this attack is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and it is therefore entirely appropriate that our government has now decided to designate them as a terrorist organisation, in addition to expelling the Iranian ambassador, two measures that we commend and thank the Australian government for, and that we have long advocated for as well. Israel's enemies are Australia's enemies, that much is clear. The same regime that helped plan October 7, that directed its proxy Hezbollah to open a second front, that directly attacked Israel through ballistic weapons and threatened its nuclear annihilation, has now carried out attacks on Australian soil. The Iranian regime has demonstrated that the battle against anti-Semitism is the battle for civilization. Our community will perhaps find some solace in the knowledge that there has been this breakthrough and that our police and security agencies are absolutely devoted to protecting us and keeping us all safe. Yet there will be great anxiety that we have been targeted in such a callous and calculated way by a ruthless and violent foreign force because of who we are. Thank you very much.
Knowing that Iran is actually proxies of Iran are behind it, surely that upgrades this.
Look, it does, and I spoke right after the announcement to the owners of the business here in Sydney that was targeted, and they were beside themselves. And on one level, this brings some sort of closure, I suppose, and greater clarity as to who was responsible and why. But knowing that a foreign regime that has committed terror attacks throughout the world is targeting Australian Jews, it's absolutely terrifying. And there are so many layers to this. We've seen the involvement of organised crime. So to have so many lethal elements involved, it really has caused further terror in the community, no doubt. I think it always was. When you have something motivated by political ideology that targets civilians, I think that meets any definition of terrorism.
The lady behind Lewis Continental Kitchen, she must be feeling quite terrified right now to know that country, Iran is behind us.
That's exactly how she's feeling. And they're besieged at the moment with media inquiries, and, you know, it's a small family running a small business, and they're deeply concerned for their safety and their welfare. So I'd also ask everyone to respect that. But this is something that will cause a lot of anxiety and concern in the Jewish community, there's no doubt. I mean, the acts themselves were horrific, but now to know and to have confirmation, something that many of us suspected, that there was a foreign interference element to this and Iranian regime direct involvement, it's terrifying. When we look at the history of the last decades of what Iran has done in places like Argentina, the deadly attacks it's carried out against Jewish targets, not merely Israeli targets, this shows the gravity of the situation and why the government has taken the action that it's taken.
Alex, given that your former parents are targeting the attacks, do you have people that the Iranian regime could have been behind that?
Look, it's not clear whether that particular incident was also carried out by the Iranian regime, but for a long time there's been intelligence that Iran had been planning to attack Jewish leaders throughout the Jewish diaspora, so it certainly wouldn't surprise me. It's not going to change the way I operate and the way I live. I'm an Australian, I'm immensely proud of that, and I'll be a proud Jew as well for as long as I live. So nothing will be altered by that, but of course knowing that we have this level of sophistication, a combination of domestic operatives and a foreign regime, it's terrifying.
Are you worried about how much more could come out about these attacks, and then there are more that are being directed by the Iranian regime?
Well, we want to have all the information to come to light as quickly as possible, and we have absolutely no doubt that law enforcement are acting with all their devotion and all their excellence, and they're clearly world class to bring this information to light. this is obviously a complex scheme involving the regime and local operatives. We want to know whether there were Australian citizens or foreigners involved, what their visa status is, are they still large? There are a lot of questions to be answered here, and the sooner we can get answers to them, I think there'll be a great deal more calm in the community and wider society.
Alex, at the time, police said that this attack at Lewis Continental Kitchen wasn't likely targeted and that there was no cause for concern in the wider community. Clearly, some other evidence points right now, and that wasn't the case. Does it concern you that Iran was behind this attack and possibly others in the city, but the Jewish community was told that there was nothing?
Well, look, I think the police were operating on the basis of the evidence that was before them at the time, and no doubt they were also trying to alleviate communal anxiety and wider societal anxiety, and I can understand that. But from the perspective of the Jewish community, when you had our places of worship and private homes and vehicles and businesses being targeted in this way, it was terrifying. It was a period when we were waking up every morning knowing that something would have happened overnight and not quite knowing what. And that is the very power of terror. It makes you question yourself and change your daily activities. It makes you fearful about living your life, and that's exactly what these attacks did to our community. So, you know, the police did what they could with the evidence that was before them, and again, we're deeply grateful to them and all law enforcement, national security for the work they've done.
Alex, were you surprised that this was a deli that was targeted rather than a religious site, for example? What does it say about the targeting of a Jewish way of life, no matter if it's religious?
I think one of the powers of terrorism is that you don't quite know where it's going to hit. And that's what then makes people question themselves and change their daily patterns and their social interactions. And so a synagogue, a community leader, a community center might be a more logical target, or an Israeli embassy. But the fact that you had a business targeted, I think, would make every Jewish Australian fearful that they could be next. And that's what terrorism really does to us.
That's Alex Ryvchin responding live, of course, to the big news today, announced just before question time, that the AFP are alleging now the Iranian government, in effect, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, was involved in these attacks on a synagogue and a Jewish business in Australia. The ambassador, there he is there, Dr. Ahmad Sadeghi, has been, or is being, expelled from the country. Let's get more reaction. Liberal MP Tony Passon is here in the studio with me. What was your first thought when you heard this news today?
Wow, Tom. We've just heard from Alex, quite understandably, the anxiety and concern that's within the Jewish community. But look, I just congratulate